Good morning now, this time in English from me. And I would like to really welcome Nevena. And I think she really deserves an applause, so let's give it to her. And I will tell you why.
Thank you, Andrea, and everyone.
We are always trying to bring to you a very interesting person, somebody who can potentially inspire you, encourage you, and to become a role model. Nevena comes from Croatia, which is a very small country. It's less than 4 million people, so it's even smaller than me, Slovakia, yes, even though she's bigger. And so she started there with Philip Morris, and she is now really very successful in what I call the World Olympics, because she's really reached a very senior position in Philip Morris International, so on a global level. So it's really a great pleasure to have you with us, Nevena.
Thank you for having me, Andrea. And I think the story you told this morning, also I think gives very important messages to the whole audience here, but also to the audience of Philip Morris employees around the world.
Yes, indeed. And in that context, what I would like to ask you is, because we have been talking about what Philip Morris Czech Republic is doing, what are our processes, what are our successes. I mentioned the challenge of really having the pool of talents, female talents, so that we can encourage and really bring those talents into the leadership. But is Philip Morris Czech Republic specific, or is it Philip Morris International? Because Nevena, she has really, now she's based in the headquarters, plus she has the overview of the globe. So tell us what is your experience from Philip Morris International?
I would say that much of what we do as a company, to your question, is Philip Morris Czech Republic different? I think Philip Morris Czech Republic leaders drive the transformation, right? So I think the fact that you lead this organization means that you put a lot of emphasis of things that matter to us as a company and to you as a person. But luckily, we as a company, from like across all the affiliates, all the markets we work across, have included diversity and equality as incredibly important principles for the company as a whole. So we have a number of projects and programs. Equal salary, equal pay for equal work is something that is very important to us across any country we work, irrespective of geographies, cultures, traditions, or anything. And I'm very proud to work for the company that puts such an emphasis of something which should be very common and should be very normal, but unfortunately is not the case everywhere yet. We have been recognized and actually certified as the first multinational company that actually does pay equally for the equal work. So I was a bit sad also to see the presentation from the previous speaker in terms of disparities. But Philip Morris as a company across the globe really champions the diversity, the inclusion, and the equity of not only women, right? Women are the biggest underrepresented minority in the world, but we're also talking about diversity in any possible sense in terms of race, gender, nationality, religion, or anything like that. So we have put targets. I think it was Danish ambassador who spoke about quotas, popularity or unpopularity, but we put targets as a company, right? We're a business. So we put a target. Exactly, voluntary targets. And we said, okay, we want to have at least 40% women in managerial position. We achieved that target. Now we put at least 35% of women in the senior leadership position. So it's really good to work for the company that really introduces that as something that it wants to achieve and pushes it towards getting there.
Wonderful. So we are saying that what we see, the processes and the approach in the Czech Republic, you have experienced that in,
yes.
We had ambassadors of Africa, from African countries, Asia. So you've seen it, so we are consistent.
We are consistent. And as you said in the beginning, and as other speakers said, it's about steps, right? I'm not a very patient person. I think many of you are here. Neither. We are not happy with where we are. We want progress to happen not tomorrow, but yesterday. But the reality of life is that things take time, right? And I think it's about tiny steps that the first speaker spoke about, tiny steps toward progress, and then we see the difference. When Andrea and I were preparing for today, over dinner yesterday, we contrasted the options we have as a women of a certain generation versus the choices our grandmothers had, or rather didn't have as a choice. So while it is difficult, it's more difficult I think, for women to make certain choices in terms of their career than it is for most men. The fact is we have ability to make that choice. Our grandmothers that I don't think were any less capable than we were much more limited in what options were available. So let's look back, let's look at where we are, and also let's remember that progress is not linear. And that's why I think what the Swedish ambassador emphasized and what we take as a company, right? We can talk about equality as a value, but somebody can say, okay, I have different kind of values. I'm about traditional values, these are the roles, this is how it should be. But we as a business see it from common sense approach. If more than 50 or 70% of graduates of universities are female, then losing out on them means losing out of talent, on possibility to innovate. So it's just a common sense, smart business practice to make sure that diversity, including women and everything else, it has equal access to opportunities, equal adjustments for the life changes, as you said, in terms of choices women can make or men can make. One example, for example, it's not just about what we do, it's also the parental leave was mentioned by many speakers here. For example, we as a company recognize it, and that's why, and I think a Danish ambassador said sometimes there is a financial consideration if it's fully paid or not paid. That's why we introduced, there is primary caregiver, secondary caregiver, in most cases is the mother and the father, but not necessarily so. So we give fully paid leave 18 weeks to the primary caregiver and 8 weeks to the secondary caregiver consecutively wherever we operate.
Do people go for that?
People go for that, and I think increasingly. We looked at some figures earlier that were mentioned. Of course, the Nordics are indeed the champions and the leaders of this, I think for the reason that they started earlier than the rest of us, right? I'm Croatian, so we are behind in terms of the figures, but it's just because they started decades ago, and the progress is there. I think we'll get there, but not unless we try, we push, we put it on the agenda, we work on it consistently across, as you said, society, across the companies, and across everything that we can do as individuals, not only for ourselves, but for the people in our surroundings that we should support and help out.
There was an interesting example which a lady ambassador from Malaysia mentioned. She said that from her experience, it's the career prioritization is actually not even a nationality or national matter. She even said it's not even religion. It's very much to what I also spoke about, the little cell we operate in, which is the tradition. Have you experienced that, or do you have some example how that
We have 15 minutes. We could talk for hours about that, but I know that we're very mindful of time, so we'll stick with the time. I'll tell you one story, and actually it will build on what Ambassador of Malaysia said. She spoke the example of the Bangladesh microcredits. I'm sure some of you are familiar with Mohammed Yunus, who won a Nobel Prize for Peace in terms of exactly Grameen Bank that gave microloans to the poor. And I was privileged to be at one venue where he was giving a speech, one of the most impressive people I've ever had a chance to listen to. And he told a story about when he decided to launch these microcredits, or bank in Bangladesh. He said to the first, I want 50% of people who'll take. These are really micro, $50 credits, right? I want them to be women, and I want 50% of the people who work for me to be women. So his people went to the villages. They came back and said, sorry, we cannot do this. Why? He said, because we would come to the women and says, okay, do you want to micro? He said, no, please talk to my husband. I'm illiterate. I cannot count. He's better at this. They didn't want to do it. So he says, no, go back. I want you to find one. When you find one, another woman will see, if she can do it, I can do it too, right? So this tradition in terms of it should be him doing it because I don't know, he's going to do it better. Once you find somebody who decides to do it to the point that you raised and others in terms of role modeling,
you need
it's
the first
extremely, you need the
white
first
ball.
Exactly.
On the billiard table.
I remember myself when Angela Merkel was elected Chancellor of Germany. I said, this is fantastic because there is an example that this can be done. I was reading something in terms of when gender stereotypes are formed. It's between the ages of 5 and 7. And there was a research, they went to the school-age children of between 5 and 7. And they said, okay, draw a picture. It was of a pilot, of a surgeon, of a police person, 4 or 5. They all drew men, and then I asked them to explain. I said, okay, race car driver. And the girl said, woman cannot be a race car driver because her long hair will be in the way of seeing. They all came with some justification. And then they brought...
There are hairdressers
yeah.
all around the world.
And
no?
then
I
they...
would assume.
Exactly. I agree. But then they brought these professionals who are all women, right? And these, you can see these children's faces in terms of, okay, you see that that's a possibility because before that you thought something else. So I think this example of having women, having people who look different than us, whose beliefs are different in the public sphere, in the government, in the cultural life, in the business, is extremely important because for the kids, It gives them possibilities that otherwise they wouldn't even imagine exist for them. And they have them today, unlike generation or two before. And it's a damn shame not to use it, and we should enable them to use it.
I absolutely agree. Also with the grandmother, and audience knows, many of you probably remember my story about the grandmother. So I fully agree. I have maybe one more question. And we have been talking about diversity, which I am also endorsing fully. And yes, we are talking about the major underprivileged group, which are female. But at the same time, diversity has many colors, like you can see, and many more. So we have talked about that. We have also talked about opportunity and really being open and supportive. So fully paid maternal leave and parental leave. And actually, even in my team, I have gentlemen who have gone for a parental leave, and they really flourish. So what the Danish and Swedish ambassadors, as men, said, I've seen it first with my husband, and I see it in the team, so we know that works. I have a question now coming a little bit closer to the ladies, because sometimes I say I can be doing whatever as a corporate business. I can lay out the red carpet for the women in terms of incentivizing to come back, having the part-time, having the flexible time, supporting equal opportunities, etc. If the woman doesn't choose it, I am locked in, the pool is empty. And now I have one data, and I would like to ask you a question about that, is, you know, there is a statistics by the World Bank which actually looked at what is the proportion of women who are actually using flexible or part-time. Not surprisingly, the Netherlands, again we go north, the female are using it 35%. Yes, 35% use that option. We go closer to Germany, 22%. Now, so 35-22, Czech Republic 6, Slovakia 3. What do you think about that?
Well, I think it goes back to the previous answer. Also, some things take time, right? And to your earlier point, and the question somebody asked to the, I think, previous panel, what do you say to the women in terms of these choices, right? First, people have to be aware what the choices are. In many cases, not everybody understands what their options are. They need to be supported not only by their own choice, but by the wider community, because it's sometimes not easy to go against cultures, tradition, your family attitudes, and similar kind of things. And to the question, what do you do? Jump in it. That's my answer for it. Like you said, make an authentic choice and go for it. It's not going to be easy. Very few things which are good in life come easy. We have to work for them. And as Norwegian ambassador said, be a pilot of your own life, but don't remember, and you said it yourself, be a captain of your life. But let's not forget, pilots need co-pilots. Nobody succeeds alone, right? You are not here just because we worked damn hard and we were given the opportunity. There was somebody who supported us along the way, enabled us to do the things. So my recommendation, and I would say plea even to every woman and man, right? Because this really is something that should involve anybody, not only because they have daughters or wives, but because it's the right thing to do, is go for it. Even fake it till you make it. There is, unfortunately, this imposter syndrome, which is very prevalent with young, successful women, young women in general, right? There is this, maybe I shouldn't be here, maybe I'm not good enough. I heard a really good joke said, we'll have a real equality when there is incompetent women at the top, because there are so many incompetent men, and competent women always wonder in terms of, am I good enough? Just go for it, do the best you can, and go for that journey. It's not going to be easy, but it's going to be worth it. That's my experience, and I think that's your experience too.
Fantastic. I like the words pilots, be the pilots, and find the right co-pilot. And I think we can end it there, probably.
I have one more question.
Yes.
It's from audience. You mentioned voluntary targets. What do you mean by that?
It means that our company decided that we want to have, I'll mention just a few, so 40% of women in managerial position. Now we put 35 in senior leadership position. So it means we make that decision a commitment, and we obviously measure our own progress in terms of that. We report internally in terms of where we are, not only internally, but publicly as well. We put another target. We want to have at least 60% of local talent in the management teams. We want to increase the size of the Asian talent. So it's basically, it's like, let's call it, this is much more successful think than the New Year resolutions most of us do. Most of us decide we want to do things, and then in February we forget 80 or 90. We take it much more seriously in our company. We said, this is what we'll do. We publicly commit to it, and then we come back to say whether we achieve it, how close, and what's the next target we do. So it's something we impose upon ourselves, but then track how good we are in terms of the objective.
Okay, thank you very much. Nevena Crljenko, Philip Morris International a Andrea Gontkovičová. Philip Morris, Česká republika, Slovensko, Maďarsko.
Thank you very